So one of the things I wanted to point out is how general the benefit of this course is. You probably think, well, yeah, I'm going to learn about the future and stuff, but actually it sort of goes beyond that. Think about all the important entities in the world who are not looking for outside input on governance. There are a lot of entities like that. They plan to make all decisions internally. They, to some extent, don't care what people in the outside world think. And there's no mechanism for trying to influence governance in those entities from the outside. It's not like there's an email address you can write to or something. And there are a lot of important things you can do in the world if you can get the attention of those entities and get them to change something that they're doing wrong. So we have a history going back to January 2018 of doing exactly that. So complaining about entities who are giving inaccurate depictions of AI in the future online. And when we started doing that, we knew that we were sort of on a path less often tread and stuff. You know, we're sort of, we're marching to the beat of a different drummer. Maybe people would find that interesting, you know, but it never occurred to us that every entity that we talked about changed things almost immediately after our video. It's like, what? So, but they never mentioned us, of course, because why would they? That we're this obscure people, you know, the old US map, Edmonton was the only major Canadian city off the US wall map, because we're just farther north than all the other major cities. So it's like we don't even exist, you know. This person from Edmonton's complaining about us, and they're right. And so we're going to do what they say and take that page down or fix it. But we're not going to mention them, because why would we? Yeah. So that happened, and often so completely that it almost looks like the content was never there. The only proof that the previous version was there is our screen capture of it. That's a part of our video. Otherwise, it's like it never happened, that thing that they previously said. And we realized that there are not too many people trying to do that. So like you would say, well, what entities? It can't be anything important. Well, what about the government of Finland? Does that sound important to you? Finland is a very nimble country. You know, they're small, they can turn on a dime, and they're very proud of sort of their nimbleness. So they decided, of all the countries in the world, to be the best at AI, and their whole population was going to be informed about AI. So they had a national AI course that was free to everybody in the country, and you also take from outside the country. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Why don't I take this AI course? And as one might predict for something that a government produces, they had this one part that went like this. Don't worry about a thing. You know, we're the government. We have your back. Don't lie awake at night and worry about robots taking your job, or, you know, you becoming irrelevant in the world of the future, because with self-improving AI, every time that AI wants to improve, they'll need our permission. And we'll have a commission of people just like you to decide whether we're going to allow the AI to self-improve or not. And I looked at that, I thought, there's not a computer scientist anywhere in the world who thinks that's what self-improving AI means. Doesn't need human permission. So anyway, we did this video about it, and within 3 days, that page had been removed from the government AI course. We thought, isn't that cool? Maybe we can do other stuff. Then let's take the most famous tech writer out there, Yuval Noah Harari. I like him very much. But there is one line in the front matter of his book, Homo Deus, that sort of grabs you. It's from the Huffington Post. And it says that Yuval Noah Harari is so articulate, you almost can't even begin to criticize him. And it's like in big print and so on. So people, before they read the book, look at that. Then they read the book and they don't criticize him. And so there's almost no criticism of him. And so we thought, well, that's kind of cool. Let's see what happens if we find something to criticize. And there are big things. I mean, he was so reactive. Like the things I'm going to tell you, they're not currently problems with the way that he's talking about things, but at one time they were. First of all, he said, human culture will be wrecked. Why will human culture be wrecked? Because every plot line of every movie, TV show, novel, whatever play you've ever been to depends upon human decision-making. And in the future, all the important decisions will be made by machines. Who to marry, what to do with your life, where to live, everything, all those decisions, you go to the sentient machine because you know that everybody who made those decisions themselves, their lives turned out very, very poorly. And the ones who did what the sentient machine said, their lives is just splendid, and so it becomes obvious. And he said, therefore, human culture will be wrecked because all the plot lines will be bad. And I said, that is ridiculous. Humans are adaptable. There's so much extra intelligence to go around. Then we can run multiple lives at once. The reason we can't do that now is we'd get them mixed up and make terrible mistakes. But if we were a whole lot smarter, that wouldn't ever happen. So FOMO is gone, right? The fear of missing out. It's no longer a thing. If you have three things at the same time in different parts of the world, you want to go to them all, you can. Like the biological you can go to one of them, and one of your highly efficient electronic selves will go to the other two. And, in the evening, all have a party together. The party's so much fun because you're so compatible, because all three of you in the end are you, so it's like there's no incompatibility ever possible. And when you meet a friend on the road in this new world, you'll only have successes to share. Never any regrets, just successes, right? Because everything becomes possible, and the culture is much, much better than now, rather than being wrecked. Yeah. He also said, and he used to say this at the beginning of like practically every talk that he gave, I'm a historian, and so my role is just to point out the dangers. I don't have to provide solutions. But then he did provide solutions. He went in on and talked about solutions. So it's such a bad preamble because you get so mad that he says he's not going to provide solutions, but then he provides them, And so I said, stop doing that. Your self-description is awful and everything after that is great. So why would you do that? Why in your first 30 seconds, you shoot yourself in the foot, So anyway, he stopped doing that. And the third thing was that he used to say, join a group, because as an individual, you have very little power. There's very little you can do. But then you say, you're Yuval Noah Harari. You're like the most influential public intellectual in the world. Why would you say that? You are one person. You do have agency. I mean, why would you tell us that we can't do what you're doing? That doesn't make any sense. We probably can do what you're doing. So anyway, he also stopped saying that. So, and then think about Zoom. think about what we're doing right now and think about how you feel as we go from virtual background to virtual background. You'll recognize immediately, this is protein folding, which computers solved in the fall of 2020. This is a Kardashev type 1 civilization with a megastructure modulating the exact temperature of the Earth. So global warming is no longer a thing, and we're getting all this extra energy. And if you think that's cool, this is Kardashev type 2. We're doing the same thing around the sun. And then there's also Kardashev type 3 and 4 and stuff. Yeah, this is the game of Go. And this occurred in 2016 on the same day as our second performance of The Future and All That Jazz. So Rich Sutton, who was one of the computer scientists sort of behind this great victory of AlphaGo, where from that point onward, computers were better at Go than human beings. And the game of Go was much more beautiful than it had ever been when humans, yeah. He came to our future and all that jazz. So like this occurred in Europe and Asia. And so they're ahead of us in time. So he took that great success from AlphaGo and then came to our future and all that jazz event in the same day. How about that? And then in the fall of 2020, this idea of multiple instances of selves, we did cardboard or coroplast cutouts of the students. No one anywhere in the world has ever done that for a class of students. And yeah, it began when I got cutouts of myself because my boss said that we should have that. I don't know why he said that, but anyway, it started an avalanche of activity, yeah. So you're starting to think, I wonder what the cutouts cost. I wonder what the cutouts cost. And I'm not going to tell you, but what I am going to tell you is that we didn't keep doing it. So in the winter of 2021, we did something different. And what did we do in the winter of 2021? Well, we did personality testing, NEO-PIR, which is kind of the best kind of personality test for normal people. And I had done that, and it showed I had sky-high openness and almost no neuroticism. And the students were so fascinated by my results that they wanted to do the same thing. What I can tell you about costs is that the cost of the coroplast cutout and of the personality test was almost exactly the same, to a dime, you know. It's like amazing. Is that right? Okay, and so you're taking the course now in the fall of 2021. What are we going to do for you guys? Okay, so it can't be the same. A course about the future has to morph and change every term, right? It cannot just be static. That's not a valid course about the future. So in fall 2021, we're going to be heavily into virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, and what's called XR, which is sort of all those things together. And so that's going to require a headset, right? Fairly expensive headset. And so you remember when I told you about those 4 categories of students? We're not going to get headsets for everybody, particularly the people not coming to class, right? So, and this is like after the midterm exam and so on. So we're not going to test the students really on what they learn in the virtual reality session, because I think the ones with the headsets, which will be a subset of the whole class, will get a much richer experience than the others. So that's a bit of an incentive for the students who want to be those that actually come to the teaching room and have face-to-face encounter versus by Zoom. And it may even favor the ones who prefer on camera and to be part of the video rather than not being in the video. I think we'd have a hard time affording more than about 5 of the VR headsets. And I think that'll all turn out fine. I think we'll end up about 5 of these gung-ho students who want to be in the room and sort of in the video and so on. So the ones who are in the room and in the video can also get the VR headsets. Yeah. And what are we going to do in winter 2022? I don't know, but it'll be just as cool as the other stuff. Yeah. So how about that, eh? So now, just though, getting back to Zoom backgrounds, think about the following thing, which really fascinates me. So in March of 2021, March 1st, that's Future Day. You don't know it's Future Day because we're one of the few human beings in the world celebrating Future Day. But anyway, for March 1st, I did a presentation proposing that we substitute Zoom backgrounds for PowerPoint slides, that you give a presentation with changing Zoom virtual backgrounds rather than PowerPoint slides. We were the first person to suggest that. And why did I suggest it? So let's just think about numbers here. You're probably thinking, well, how many slides can you have? That's a very good question. So in March, when I gave the talk, the situation was this, that on a Mac, you couldn't do this with a virtual background. You could only do that on a PC. But on a PC, you only had a choice of 12 virtual backgrounds, whereas on a Mac, you had 16. So it was like a bit too heterogeneous for this really to work well. Suppose Zoom accepts my idea and says, yes, we are the new PowerPoint, but it's completely different on Mac and PC. And so if you're used to a Mac, you will hate the way it works on PC and vice versa. And so 5 months later, at the beginning of August 2021, they brought the two platforms together. And now I'm on a Mac. And so this thing you could never do on a Mac, you can now do. And on the PC, they brought the number of virtual backgrounds up from 12 to 16. Now, it's just like the other thing I was telling you. They weren't looking for input from the outside about this kind of thing. It's so basic to how Zoom works. But I'm sure somehow that they knew what I was talking about here. And we played some role in Zoom making this change. It may be 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10%, or it may be 50%. We'll never know what proportion of that decision. And then you think, yeah, but you can't monetize it. You'll suddenly notice that we're not trying to monetize subsets of subsets. That doesn't mean we have no intent to ever profit from this. We think, and I'm pretty sure of this, when we make a big change, people will notice that, and then they'll be willing to talk to us about making other big changes, and there'll be money in that. But up until that point, we're completely not focused on monetizing stuff. Because if you think about, like, let's take global warming, for instance, it's too big of a problem for one company to fix it all. On the other hand, one person, one entity can sort of get the whole world working on it. And so you can make the necessary change for all the big problems of the human race happening. You just can't own the intellectual property and make a profit on it, right? But still, I think like solving one of these things helps you then to be successful with others. And we'll sort of build on something that will be would put us in quite a favorable situation in the long run. And let's talk about timeless content. You'll find we have a lot of that, and most other people you know have none, right? If you run an ordinary company, you can't have timeless content because you need to burnish your brand and morph and change to keep up with the competition every year and stuff. So why would you have something that stays the same for 10 or 15 years? But if you think of the most highly regarded intellectual output that human beings have ever had in the history of civilization, all that stuff is timeless, right? It was as good 100 years ago as it is now. And so somebody needs to be working on that stuff. And we're also doing that. So we are very proud. We have videos now that are 10 or 15 years old that get more views now and don't contain any errors. There's nothing wrong now. There's nothing that we put in them 10 to 15 years ago that is not true today. And I think we're practically the only people trying to do that, you know? And it isn't rocket science, right? I mean, it seems like, well, the world needs timeless content, right? Sure they do. So, yeah. So any questions about this?
No.
No.
I think you've answered more than all my questions.
Okay. Yeah. So if I just wanted to point out that a lot of people who have taken the course and who have known me and so on, they claim that the lessons go a lot beyond medicine and science to sort of life itself. So you may pick up some of that too, and it may seem to you that it's valuable. Even if that's not the case, I think it's sort of fun for you to see these very large scale things that we're doing that are larger in scale, just like these pictures of Kardashev type 1 and Kardashev type 2, right? Like, there's nobody else thinking about this, you know? Like, how do you prevent these reflective mirrors from crashing into the sun? Who protects this? Who owns it? How do you put something like that together? Nobody's asking these practical questions about these megastructures, and yet we will get there. We'll be doing that. And so we need to know, what are they made of? You know, how and what kind of entity is involved in their construction, you know? It's fascinating to me, and it's not a subject for very many people. You won't find like a lot of people talking about how we create a megastructure for Kardashev type 1. Yeah. And there's a lot of mistakes between the Kardashians and Kardashev. So you'll find that people try to remember this strange word Kardashev and say Kardashian instead, and then you know that you've got them. So, right, your mind is in the wrong place, you know, if you're making this error. Yeah. So anyway, a lot of our stuff is about thinking differently, and so you'll learn a lot about that in the course. And you won't just learn it from me and the other people teaching in the course, but from the other students. Just think about these ratios, right? There are 40,000 students at the U of A, right? And my course is kind of a way to select the very few who actually care about the long range future and sort of big picture stuff, these large scale things. Most people are sort of like politicians. They're maybe interested in the next 2 or 3 years until the next election, until they graduate, you know, something like that, but hardly any interest beyond that. So this course selects for students who really have a much bigger view of the world than the average. And I think you will really enjoy that. And so sometimes the most exciting thing is the other people your own age that you meet in the course. But then you're thinking that I'm talking about the other students. No, you'll also find people teaching in the course who are your own age. And I'm very proud of that. So Shauna Pandya, she's not exactly your age, but she's not that much older. She's just packed an incredible amount of life. She's sort of a astronaut, celebrity, physician, extreme medicine expert, all sorts of things, just all packed into one. She's also started an award-winning company, and been weightless in space, and all this kind of thing. I'm sure those are all things that you're aspiring to. I'm just saying she's a little bit ahead of you. She even looks a little bit like you. So anyway, it's kind of good all the way around, right? And so what is she doing in August? You probably think she's home reading books about aerospace. No, she's at the front lines of the COVID epidemic. She is womaning, emergency departments around the province, keeping people from dying and that sort of thing. Yeah. So it's also exciting when you realize that her day job is sort of protecting people from death. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And she's just one of many very cool people that you will meet in the course. So I kind of like surprising people. And it's a very good surprise for young person to meet another person almost just like them, but who has done so much as of this time. And you realize that life is almost limitless in its possibilities, when you have that kind of experience. Two of the TAs teach in the course. And you may think this part of the discussion could be really boring because I'm going to talk about the TAs. They must be, really boring. So Terrence Stokowski, listen to this. So she's the only student in the 10 years I've been teaching the course who, when she sent me the draft of her paper for the course and I suggested changes, she made none of the changes that I suggested, not a single one. I sort of said, well, this is wonderful. It's all your own ideas. It's so you, that's great. But why don't you marry it with the known history of the discipline and put in, the usually accepted history of where this all came from? And she said, Dr. Solez, I'm not going to do that. So she still gave the best talk and had the best paper, and it was so kind of amazing to think, that her refusal to change something that in a sense was like more perfect than anything I had ever encountered, because most students' papers, they're sort of reworking the work of others, right? Very few of them are just the intellectual output of that student put on paper in pure form, right? Without a lot of synthesis of other people's work. Yeah, it was just absolutely amazing. So this is her. And so this is a picture. This is now a coroplast cutout of all three of them. But at the time that this picture was taken, she was live in the center, and those are two coroplast cutouts of her. Yeah. So she's one of the TAs who teaches in the course. She talks about human flourishing. And Ashita Mogi also teaches in the course, and she's the person that I did all those videos with starting in January 2018 to sort of change the world, and everybody did what we said and so on. So yeah, and they are people, approximately your age or younger, and they are teaching in the course. You can see them on the schedule. So there, yeah. So do you have any other questions?
No.
No? I see. Yeah. So, okay, then. So I will see you on the 2nd, and there'll be various communications from me about the details of the course. But you're now ahead of everybody else because nobody knows about the headphones and the amplifier and all. So this you were the first person to hear about that because we just decided about that today, and even the sanitizable wireless microphone. Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, thank you for talking with me. If you would reply with your student number, then I can get people working on adding you to the student roster tomorrow. And I hope this wasn't too painful an experience.
No, I'm very excited.
Okay, good. All right, well, that's it. And I'll see you on Thursday then. So
Okay. Bye.
bye-bye. Bye. Yeah.